Well, hello there, second graders. Welcome back to math class. Today, we're on page 747 in your math workbooks. And as I look ahead in this unit, it's all pretty much about the same thing. It's talking about equal parts. So we should be able to work through the rest of this unit on pretty much the same theme. We're looking at shapes, all kinds of different shapes, and dividing them into equal parts. So what you're getting an introduction to here is fractions. And there's a word that scares every math student half to death. Fractions. Anytime something is a part, a piece of something, it's a fraction of it. And what we're looking at as we go through these next 4 or 5 chapters is equal. Equal means that they're the same, that they have the same value. So let's see what we got to do here. Well, it's asking you to draw a hexagon on page 747. Now, I don't know what they expect you to do with a hexagon, because it doesn't really give you a problem other than letting you practice drawing the shape. A hexagon, if you remember, is a shape that has 6 sides. And the traditional hexagon looks like this. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides. And each side is the same length. That's the traditional hexagon. Now, if we think about what this unit's about, equal parts, if I wanted to draw a line through this shape and have equal parts, there's any number of ways I can do it. The simplest way is to just draw a line right through the middle of it. So here's 1/2, and here's 1/2 of that shape. Notice those are fractions. You understand it already because you know if you're going to share your bag of M&Ms with your sister or brother, you're going to split it into 2 equal piles of candy. Each pile is 1/2 of the bag. See, it's not a big mystery. You do it all the time. Now you just got to do it with a shape. So pretend that's a bag of M&Ms, and we just split it in half. And we have 2 equal parts. Now you can do that with just about any shape. So let's go on to the next page. I like the way they trick you into learning about fractions, you know? When you're in the second grade, we've got on 748 and 749 all kinds of different shapes there. We got rectangle, we got a trapezoid, we've got circles, and it's asking you to split those into equal parts. And the first one they give you is a rectangle on the top of 748. They give you a rectangle. We know a rectangle, it has 4 sides, and those sides are parallel. And it tells you, shows you how you can cut that into halves. And again, you can do it by just drawing a line through the middle of it. And each one is equal. Then they go on to ask you to break it into 3 parts or 4 parts. Well, it's easy to break this into 4 parts. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you cut each one of those parts out with your scissors, they would all be exactly the same. 3 parts, and there's always more than one way to do things. Now the book shows you by doing vertical lines into 3 parts, so you can break it into thirds or 3 parts, and each one of these would be the same. You could also take that same rectangle and break it into 3 equal parts that way. The only thing that matters is that they are equal. They each have the same amount of measurement. Let me fix this here real quick. Every time I grab the board, I smudge the date. So now, the next section, to show and share, it just asks you to identify how many parts you see in each one of these shapes. So number 1, you see there's only 2 parts. Number 2, there are 3 parts, just like the example above. Number 3, they've taken that circle and they've broken it into 4 parts. If you look at number 4, you can see how you can break it into thirds by using horizontal lines. And then you have a shape that's, in geometry, it's known as a rhombus. The sides are all equal, and it looks like if you draw a line down the middle of that, you got 2 triangles. So there are 2 equal parts there. Number 6, you just count the parts. There are 4 of them. Now on 749 on your own, it's asking you to do just that again. To find how many equal parts you can count in each one of those shapes. Problem number 13 says draw to show halves. Remember our bag of M&Ms? We split it in half. Explain how you know the parts are halves. Well, the simple explanation is they have to be the same. They have to be equal. They have to be the same shape. So you can draw a shape, any kind of shape you want to draw. Just remember, when you split it in half, make 2 parts out of it, that those 2 parts have to look exactly the same. On page 750, here they want you to sort out some shapes. And they're asking you to look at a whole pile of shapes there. There's about 8 or 9 of them. And determine whether they actually are equal. And I'll give you this much of a clue. 2 of them are not equal at all. If you cut those 2 into their parts, they would not be exactly the same. So which two are they? Go ahead and you find those two. And number 15, draw lines to show force. Force, 3 different ways. Now they're really asking you to think a little bit here. Because, like I said, there's always more than one way to solve a problem. It wants this into 4 parts, or into the fraction would be 1/4. Well, right away we know that if we go across the middle and across the middle there, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So what's another way we can do it? You just got to think a little bit here. How about if we do it this way? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 equal parts. Each one of those is exactly the same as the next one. Now, this is where it gets tricky. And you got to really put on the thinking cap here. Because there is another way you can split this into 4 parts. One, 2, 3, 4. And each one of those triangles is exactly the same. Now, $7.51. Here's your homework. On $7.51 and $7.52, it's asking you to answer how many parts you see in the first 3 there. Problem number 4 wants you to sort out those parts, and just glancing at it, there's one there that is not equal. See if you can find it. Problem number 5 is asking you to rely a little bit on your understanding of how you describe these shapes. It says, look at the shapes, describe the shapes that you did not put an X on, the ones that were actually equal parts. And so I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different parts, or I'm sorry, 5 different shapes that have equal parts. Now I'm going to give you the answers, but I don't want you to just not think about it. The first one is a square. Up on the top left of those shapes is a square. Right below it is a quadrilateral, or a 4-sided shape there that's cut in half. It's also a trapezoid because it only has one set of parallel sides. In the middle, you see a triangle. Right below it, you see a circle. And just to the right of that, you see a rectangle. You see, they all have names. And when you look at the shape and you recognize what it is called, what its name is, then you will have mastered the vocabulary and you will have put that into your long-term memories. Because trust me, geometry doesn't go away after 2nd grade. On 7.52, now I don't want you to get confused by 1 and 2 here, because they talk an awful lot about parts and not an awful lot about what the fraction of those parts is called. So when you've got 3 equal parts, each one represents 1 1/3. Because when you have 3 1/3s, you have a whole object, a whole shape. So each one of those little squares in problem number 1 is called a third. And number 2, because there are 4 parts, that is called a fourth. If there were 5 parts, it would be a fifth. And if there were 8 parts, it would be an eighth. So each one represents that fractional part of the whole object. See, I knew they were going to sneak in learning about fractions in this lesson. So that's lesson 11.8. 11.9 is exactly the same thing, showing equal parts of a whole. And on 753, to look ahead at the next lesson, you can see some of those shapes are split into equal parts, and some of them are just all cockeyed. Wrong. Your job is to figure out if they're equal or not. So that's our lesson for today. We'll stop there. We'll come back tomorrow, and probably tomorrow we'll do, we could probably do at least 2 of these lessons in one setting because they're really all about the same thing. Recognizing equal parts of a shape. All right, you go ahead and you practice with that. You have a good day. Stay safe as always. Stay out of trouble. And be kind. All right, see you tomorrow.